Today's tale is a case of a haunting with a ton of eyewitnesses. Normally, occurrences like hauntings lose credibility because only a few people see it happen, and they come with questionable proof, if they even have proof. Therefore, we can easily say it was all made up and fake. With this story, however, that's not possible because the hauntings were sometimes claimed to have happened right in public. What makes this story scary and mysterious is the source of where the hauntings came from. Do you enjoy listening to tales about the wicked and the dark? Then you will love the mystery of today's tale. Let's get right into it. LaToya Ammons found the perfect house to move her family into. The single mom found 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana, well suited to her family's needs. With 3 children to look out for, 2 sons 7 and 9, along with a 12-year-old daughter, LaToya was looking for a safe neighborhood and a beautiful place to live in so her kids could go out and play, as well as have their own space. Her mother, Rosa Campbell, also lived with the family. LaToya rented 3860 Carolina Street in November 2011, hoping to spend Christmas in a new home. Some of the houses on the street date back to 1926. This house was perfect. It had 3 bedrooms, a nice den, heating, and a lovely screened porch where she could picture herself seated with a cup of coffee. She invested in the rental property, and the family moved in. Little did she know, the house of dreams was about to turn into their worst nightmare. The first odd thing Rosa and LaToya noticed were flies. Dark black flies swarming on the porch screen door. There seemed to be some sort of infestation because no matter how many times they killed them, the flies would just keep coming back. In the cold, cold winter nights, the flies seemed to thrive on their porch door. It was baffling. After the flies, the women began to hear footsteps and the sound of the basement door creaking open late at night. The creaking happened even when they locked the basement door leading to the kitchen. This became a regular occurrence, but every time they checked, there was nobody there. Until one night, in December, when Rosa Campbell saw something hair-raising. She felt a strange presence and heard the usual footsteps. When she got out of bed to investigate, she found large, muddy boot prints. Walking towards the living room, she saw a black shadow pacing. Rosa claims that she was born special and is immune to demons, so she simply prayed and didn't wake anyone. But Rosa and her daughter agreed. The Ammons family house was inundated with strange occurrences. Despite this, the family did not make a big deal about what was happening and continued to live as usual. However, in March of 2012, things took a turn for the worse. One night, around 2 a.m., family and friends were gathered at the Ammons house to mourn the death of someone close. LaToya's daughter was in her room with a friend when she went to check on the 2 girls. To her shock and horror, she found her 12-year-old daughter levitating above the bed, unconscious. Thrilling sound. Everyone immediately gathered around the child and began praying until she fell back onto the bed. The young girl woke up with no memory of what happened to her. Unnerved, all those present that night refused to return to her home and urged her to seek professional help in the matter. It was then LaToya realized she needed to speak to their local church. Terrifying occurrences increased as the Ammons tried to find help, but local churches refused to visit and instead suggested LaToya take matters into her own hands. She was advised to pour a concoction of ammonia and bleach throughout the home, draw crosses on every door, and even bathe her children in olive oil. While LaToya was described by people in her neighborhood as a down-to-earth, level-headed woman, everyone saw her quickly change as she tried more and more experimental or spiritual methods to save her family for these occurrences. It was told that the desperation could be seen in her eyes. As a last resort, the church suggested that the family create a makeshift altar in the basement, where the possession or haunting seemed to originate. There was finally peace in the house, but it was short-lived. Only 3 days later, the paranormal activity returned with a more vicious intensity. Unfortunately, none of these measures proved to be effective, and the situation only continued to escalate. With no other options, the family had no choice. LaToya took it upon herself to exorcise the home, trying everything from only wearing white clothing to burning sage and reciting Psalm 91 out loud. But despite her efforts, the situation only worsened. Every time she would recite from the Bible, she would get hurt, or things would turn violent in the house. Things continued to take turns for the worse. The family even started hearing footsteps and bangs on doors or walls. The source of all disturbances seemed to be the basement, almost as if it were a portal to another world. It wasn't until LaToya solicited the help of two clairvoyants that they learned the horrifying truth. The two clairvoyants told her 3860 Carolina Street was possessed by over 200 demonic spirits. Things started getting really out of hand when she found her kids speaking in tongues with bloodshot eyes, and they had strange facial expressions, sinister smirks that didn't even look like them. Her daughter even said she felt like she was being choked in her bed almost every night, and her 7-year-old son would lock himself up in his closet to talk to a boy no one had ever seen. LaToya asked him who he was talking to. He explained it was some unseen force who was telling him what it was like to be killed. LaToya was at her wit's end, so she sought help from their family physician, Dr. Onyokwu, who visited their house. Things became intense when her two boys started cursing the entire staff, yelling diabolically. One of them was even reportedly thrown against a wall by some kind of magical force, right in front of the staff. This entire incident is recorded in these medical documents. The names of the children have been redacted from all official records documenting this haunting. During a particularly intense attack from paranormal entities, LaToya's daughter required stitches. The boys passed out and had to be hospitalized at Methodist Hospital campus. It gets even crazier when he allegedly crawled backward up a wall, onto the ceiling, and then flipped over to land on his feet. This all happened right in front of the hospital staff and police. LaToya used olive oil to draw crosses on her son's foreheads. While hospital staff ridiculed her, miraculously, her 9-year-old awakened, completely normal. But her younger son woke up screaming in pain, with superhuman strength. 5 staff members had to hold him down. DCS finally got involved after an anonymous caller reported mental illness in the family. However, social worker Valerie Washington found that LaToya was of sound mind. The children had no injuries or bruises, but the 7-year-old growled at the caseworker, eyes rolling back in his head. He also attempted to strangle his brother, requiring adult intervention. Washington interviewed the boys again that evening with Nurse Willie Lee Walker and Rosa Campbell in the room. The younger boy spoke in strange voices, threatening to kill them. The elder brother began to headbutt his grandmother, who started to pray. Washington reported that the boy seemed to simply glide upwards. The nurse and the caseworker fled the room in terror. This entire debacle prompted DCS to take emergency custody of the children. It was traumatizing for the family as they had already been through so much. But the question remains, was this truly a haunting? Were they being possessed? On the 20th of April, 2022, the staff at the hospital asked Reverend Michael Maginot to evaluate and heal one of the children. The Reverend found it strange that the children only reacted when he said something about demons. If he praised the Lord in Latin, nothing happened. There was no response, no reaction. This made him skeptical about whether the children were just putting on a show. He decided to pay the Ammon's home a visit. When he started talking to the family, he felt lights would flicker in a bathroom and would stop when Maginot went there. As the women entailed the events, which took over 2 hours, the blinds in the kitchen also began to move without any breeze. Maginot also witnessed footprints in the room, and when he pressed a crucifix to LaToya's forehead, she began to convulse. The Reverend was convinced that demonic forces were at play. He also alleged that the house was haunted by ghosts and suggested they find another place to stay. The women went to stay at a relative's house. DCS accompanied the women a week later to review their living conditions. Washington, along with Lake County Police, required an inspection. One of the officers from Gary and Hammond police departments, Captain Charles Austin, went inside the home. LaToya refused to go in while Rosa led the tour. She warned them about the space beneath the basement stairs, claiming it was occupied by demons. One of their audio recorders was malfunctioning. The batteries had just been replaced, but they died. While another officer recorded the interview, he later heard an unidentified voice whisper, "Hey," when he played it back. The officers also took photos of the house during their investigation and discovered a strange white cloud-like figure in the upper corner of the stairs leading to the basement. Upon enlarging the photo, they were able to discern what appeared to be a face, along with a green image that looked like a woman. Meanwhile, Officer Austin also had some bizarre experiences while investigating the house. The garage door at the Ammon's home refused to open, despite the power being on. Additionally, photos taken on his iPhone showed unusual silhouettes. On the way home, the radio in his police-issued Ford malfunctioned, and later, the seat in his personal Infiniti moved forward and backward on its own, which left him unsettled. Captain Austin may not have believed in demons before, but now he claimed he had witnessed supernatural occurrences with his own eyes. Meanwhile, DCS investigated the children's absence from school. While Latioa maintained it was from demonic disturbances, this problem had occurred 3 years ago as well. During an evaluation, psychologists concluded that the youngest child only acted possessed when he didn't want to answer a question. The other children seemed to be caught in some kind of placebo effect and experienced pseudo-symptoms because of their mother's stories. A new caseworker was assigned to the family, Samantha Illich. Illich, Latoya, Rosa, Captain Austin, Reverend Maginot, and 2 officers from a previous trip went to visit the house on May 10th. Oddly, they found a strange pink liquid oozing in the basement from a hole. Maginot and the officers dug the hole wider to see the origin of the liquid but found nothing, so they filled the hole with some salt. Up in the living room, the liquid kept appearing on the blinds, and as Latoya wiped it off, it would appear again. Illich touched it with her pinky finger, which began to tingle. Following a panic attack, she ran from the house. Reverend Maginot told the Ammons their answer lay in an exorcism. His request for a church-sanctioned exorcism was denied at first. Therefore, he followed through with a minor exorcism. He performed a 2-hour ritual in the presence of 2 officers and Illich. After the ritual, Latoya tried to look up the demons online, as each one of them represented the problems her family was facing. Oddly, her computer kept shutting down, almost as if something were trying to hinder the search. She found names like Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, things like that. Illich, on the other hand, suffered 3rd-degree burns within a week after her final visit. Then she broke 3 ribs, her hand, and her ankle in separate incidents. She felt demons had attached themselves to her. With the church's permission, Maginot performed 3 major exorcisms, one of which was in Latin. Latoya kept convulsing through the entire ordeal. Once they felt the demons were expelled from their lives, Rosa and Latoya found a new place to live in Indianapolis, and the Reverend blessed their new home. In November 2012, after 6 months, custody of her children was finally given back to Latoya Ammons. 3860 Carolina Street was bought by a TV show host who spent some time in the haunted place. It was also a subject of documentaries and shows. According to the landlord, Charles Reed, the house has since had new tenants as well, and no one has complained of supernatural occurrences. Did Latoya simply experience pseudo-possession symptoms? But then, the official reports contain bizarre incidents, such as the boys climbing the walls. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to like and subscribe.